Hi everyone, and welcome back to our next lecture regarding imperialism and industrialization. So, imperialism and industrialization, like we said, they kind of go hand in hand. Part of that has to do with resources, and another part of that has to do with trying to find available markets for produced goods. And imperialism often was seen as a way in order to fulfill that, especially when we're talking about mercantilism. So, let's see. Imperialism's impact. Native people lose control of their lands and independence. Now, this is regardless of any kind, either direct or indirect control when we're talking about imperialism. One way or another, the native people lose some of their sovereignty. New diseases such as smallpox reduce native populations. And we've seen this time and time again whenever you have people who've been away from one another indefinitely, and now when they're around one another, do not share the same inherent resistances or immunities to certain kinds of pathogens. So smallpox was a big example here in North America, wiping out a very large portion of the Indian population. Resistance movements develop, famines shift from subsistence to cash crop farming, and harsh working conditions reduce native populations. And of course, resistance movements, maybe the local population are wanting some of their traditional ways back. Maybe they feel like they're being oppressed by the imperialist power. It could have to do with cyclical tribal warfare, feeling that they were robbed. There's many reasons. Now, famines. A lot of this has to do with whenever you have cash crops, people tend to grow one single thing. And that one single thing could be indigo, cotton, something like that the imperial power may want. However, whenever you have bad weather or war, then the people don't have food to fall back on if they're not having their food imported in. Harsh working conditions. This could be found throughout different imperial areas. For example, if you look at what happened to the Native Americans in Mexico after the Spanish conquistadors took over, many of them were virtually enslaved and forced to work in mines, and many of them worked themselves to death. You could find this in the Caribbean. You can find this in Belgian Congo, many other places. Identity crises develop in colonies regarding race and wealth. And so a good example of this would be in India. So in India, the British had a very successful colony, and they brought forth their own education system, many English-style jobs and things like that. However, many people who grew up in this system who were of Indian descent found that they could only climb up so high within the social or the economic hierarchy. Unless they were a white British citizen, they couldn't necessarily have those higher positions, like say at a law firm or in a government bureaucracy or the military even. Now, we're going to see that many things are going to change, even the physical geography of places that are being affected by imperialism. For example, here in our own hemisphere, you have the Panama Canal, famously taken over by Theodore Roosevelt. It was initially being built by the French, however they abandoned those plans. And Teddy Roosevelt was able to come in, and he's known as perhaps the first president in U.S. history to really push out to an expansive foreign policy. The U.S. maintained economic and political control of the Panama Canal until 1977. We paid the country of Panama quite a substantial set of funds. We gained permission to build Panama, of course, due to their government. Some people say that perhaps we aided their government in overthrowing the original one. But in any case, the agreement stuck around for a good many years. Now, another canal, remember a canal is an artificial river that's man-made. And they make this generally for the purpose of having boats go from one ocean to another. So it's a way for boats to cut through a continent instead of having to sail a long time around one. But the Suez Canal, that could be found in Egypt, and it connected the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. It was built by France in Egypt and then taken by the British. And the Suez Canal is going to have many problems all the way up into the 1950s and 60s with the Egyptian Nasser crisis with Israel, and we'll see that come up again when we talk about that next year. This is going to help modernize Egypt, but also leads to British control. Excuse the typo, please. So, once again, we see that empire has more to do with social and economic, and it can also have physical geographic feats as well. So, as we mentioned, a lot of the motivation behind imperialism was due to mercantilism. The idea that the mother country must sustain itself through trade and through siphoning off of its colonies, all while accumulating as much wealth as possible. Now, these old notions will be challenged by David Hume and Adam Smith, who believe that wealth does not remain constant and does not involve acquisition at another country's expense. And so what we're saying is that in free enterprise, wealth is not a zero-sum game. That means one person must lose for another to win, like in soccer. We're saying everybody can win under free enterprise. We're going to see that as free enterprise becomes more and more adopted by places such as America and England, the merchant class will begin to be replaced by industrialist. And of course, merchant class, you can think of old guild systems and something that you might find more in the Renaissance and the Reformation period. You're going to see the decline of traditional artisan skills by crafters, journeymen, and once again guilds. So the shoemaker and the hat maker and all those people will start to become replaced by low-skilled workers at factories who will make the same thing. Labor is going to be divided amongst workers rather than having a craftsman develop an entire work alone. Alright, so more on the effects of free enterprise. This is going to be ruled by the system of supply and demand to determine the prices of products available. Supply means how much of something you have to sell. Demand means how much someone wants that product. And of course, that's going to determine the prices. If something is more rare in the market, such as diamonds, its price is going to go up. If something is very demanded by the market, such as diamonds, the price is going to go up even further. People are allowed to have private property under free enterprise. They're allowed to compete, and they can voluntarily exchange their goods or services as they wish. And profit is the primary motive behind what these people do. And so we see that people under free enterprise are motivated because they're improving their own life, but according to Adam Smith, this would cause what's called the invisible hand of economics, where if, for example, if the baker might be baking bread because he wants money, but that helps out the people who buy the bread. And then he's able to have money to buy other products from others who are able to buy other products, and so on and so forth. The practice of free enterprise can be traced to ancient bartering and trade. So you could see remnants of this, or at least shadows of it, within, say, like native cultures, who would trade and trade their work from one tribe or inter-tribe. Government entities encouraged to establish standards in measurement, protection of trade routes, and expansion of markets. So the governments were expected to have a very hand-off approach. They were expected to do things to allow free trade to exist, such as trade routes, standard coinage, and of course protection from piracy and things like that. Alright folks, that's going to end our lecture today. We will pick up more with the effects of free enterprise, imperialism, and industrialization next time. Take care.